Now in this video, we are going to clarify the concept of identifier in Java program. An identifier is basically a memory location that is given a name for its own identification. And that memory location can store one single data item inside it. The concept of this identifier is exactly same as using some letters like X and Y in your mathematics. How many times while solving a mathematical problem you have used something like this? Let's say, let us assume the value of X equals 100 or the value of Y equals 55.6793, some numbers. It is very common, right? You frequently store some kind of numerical value like 100 into some letters like X or something like that. Also some numerical value like 55.6793 inside Y. So it is pretty common tactics, right? In that case, this X and Y are exactly same as the identifier in the context of programming. So identifiers are also used to store some kind of value inside some given name, like storing 100 in a given name X, or storing the value of 55.6793 in a given name Y, something like that. Now, in Java, there are two different types of identifier. The first one is called variables. Variables are a type of identifier that can change while the program is executing. That means you are allowed or you are free to change the value of those variables over the course of writing the program. For example, let us see this example. So in this left hand side, so in here actually at first I have used a variable called I, and I have initialized I with the value of 10, as you can see in here. Now in the course of writing the program, at some point I have changed the value of I from 10 to 28, as you can see in this line. Similarly, C is another variable which is basically storing a character A inside it initially, and over the course of program in this line I have changed the value of C to X in here. So similar thing happened to the variable F and B also. They all have a different initial value and I have changed it over the course of program. So that's the concept of variable. You can change it in your program. Now the second type of identifier, which is called constant. Constant is basically an identifier where the data item remains same throughout the execution of the program. That means you are not allowed to change the value of the constant. And normally we use constant for those values for which we are pretty sure that the values are not going to change over the course of program. For example, in here you can see several examples of constant. For example, the value of pi. The value of pi, always we know that it is going to be 3.14. So there is no chance of changing it over the course of program. So that can be an ideal candidate for constant. Then the value of gravity. That is also same always, that is 9.81 in some unit. So that can also be an ideal candidate for constant. Then also the value of on is possibly going to be true always in the program. So these things are some ideal candidate for constant. Now let us come to the syntax of declaring variables and constants. They are a little bit different, although they are mostly similar, but there are some difference. Now if you want to define or declare a variable in Java program, you have to follow the syntax like this. What I am doing in here, in the beginning I am specifying the type of data item that the variable is going to hold. That is the data type of that variable. For example, in this here in this first line, I am telling the Java program that, well, variable I is going to hold a data item of type integer, and that's why I have used int here. Then followed by the variable name over here, and then an equal symbol, and then an optional initial value of this variable. So this part is basically optional part. So what is the syntax? If we just try to write it down in general terms, it should be like the data type means the type of data item that the variable should hold, and it can be integer like this, or it can be character, or it can be float, it can be string, or anything, any other data type that you can think of. So the first one is data type, followed by the name of the variable. That can be anything like I, as you can see in here, C, then B, F. These are all I have used in here as variable name, F, B, I, C, and all. And you can use anything like X, Y, whatever name is your choice, your name, my name, whatever. So that's the name. And after that, an optional initial value based on the type of this variable. So let's say this int I, you may think of like initializing I with a value of 10, but that is purely optional. You can ignore that part also. So also you can do like, let's say char C, you want to initialize it with a value of A, but again this is optional. Float also, you can float F, you can initialize it with some kind of value like, let's say 30.66, something like that. But again, this entire part is optional. So data type followed by the variable name is the syntax for Java variable declaration. Now the constant declaration, as you can see in the right hand side over here, are almost same as the variable declaration, but one minor difference. For every time I declare a constant, I have used something called final in the start of that statement. So instead of just writing float pi 3.14, I have used final float pi equals 3.14. Now whenever I am using this final before declaring the identifier, I am telling the Java compiler that, well, the initial value is going to be the final value inside this identifier. That means you cannot change it anytime in the program. So here final float pi equals 3.14 means the final value of pi is 3.14 and you are not allowed to change it. Similarly, final float gravity equals 9.81 means the final value of this gravity identifier is 9.81 and you are not allowed to change it. Similar for the other constants also. Now in the next video, we are going to clarify the concept of both variable and constant through a demo Java program.